Hello, everyone. Welcome to Transform Now. This is our weekly pulse check where we take a look at some of the interesting stories in the world of automation and AI. I'm Brad Hairston.
And I'm Michael Marchuk.
And we're glad that we have you joining us today. Michael, we have a few interesting articles to cover, so I look forward to chatting with you about them. Let's get started with the first article. It comes to us from the Greenville News. Yes, that's straight out of South Carolina. Greenville News. And the article is titled, Gen Z's Turning More and More to Skilled Trade. Here's why. Now, this article is actually referencing a piece from the Wall Street Journal. So you might say the original source is really from New York. But this is a really interesting one for me. You and I talk a lot about the impact that automation and technology evolution is having on the workforce, and especially on the younger generation. And I think this is something that's been happening for a while, but it really is starting to show signs of changing the mindset of the younger generation. When you and I were young people, there was no choice. It was like, you go to college, you get a job, and you move on. Now you have this other channel, which is going to the trade school, which seems to be, experiencing quite a surge. I think it's great. I think a lot of people don't need to go to college, and I think that's a better path for them. So what are your thoughts on this article?
Well, I would disagree with your first assumption, saying that in the past they didn't have that option, because I grew up in a farming community and that was the option. The option was to go to the local community college, learn how to be a welder, because there's good money in welding. And so you did that, or you did over-the-road long-haul trucking. Those were the two big things that if you were in the smaller community and you wanted to get out, those were some of the larger paying jobs in the area. Otherwise, you're a farmer or maintenance kind of repair stuff. So none of those are bad choices. But the thought was that if you wanted to get a high paying job, like you mentioned, you abandoned all that and you went to school and you got your MBA and you worked in corporate America in a white collar job. And all of those things are things that people are questioning now for a couple different reasons. Back in the day when you and I went to college, it didn't cost us three kidneys to get in, to be able to stay there and be able to learn.
Right.
We were able to pay for our college with some reasonable funds and get a good education. Now people are really mortgaging their lives before they even get started. And that's a challenge for folks when they start to rethink this stuff. If I could get a job doing a skill that I can go out there and learn within 3 to 6 months and start to make some decent money, 6-figure incomes, doing that, why would I take on $500,000 of debt for the next 4 years that I'm going to spend 20 plus years paying off just to get a quote high paid job, right? Because my high paid job is really paying interest to the people who let me get my high paying job. So I do think this is a shift back towards more reality. The thing too is, let's just be honest. We start talking about people who are in their high paying jobs and they're doing white collar work. They likely don't know how to do painting and electrician work and plumbing and that kind of stuff. And what are they going to do? They're going to take their high paying job funds and they're going to go hire someone who has those skills to be able to do that. Well, we both know that the boomers are starting to age out of this whole thing. And so while you have people who have 40 years experience as plumbers and painters and whatnot, they're deciding right now that it's time to hang that up and retire. So the ones that are left are now extremely busy. And if you have tried to hire any of these people, you know that this is a very, very lucrative business now for people to get into because of that. So I fully agree with this, that this is a transition back to more reality, and that there are going to be career paths that are equally valid, whether you're doing white collar work or what we consider traditional blue collar work. The reality is that these are both equally valid career paths for someone to choose for their life.
Right. I agree with all that. And there's one of these schools close to where I live in North Texas. And they've seen a surge as well over the last 18 months or so. So I think it's a very positive trend, and I do think there's a lot of roles that we're positioning people to go do in college today that may not be here in 5 to 10 years. So I would rather see people go and develop skills that they're going to have for a lifetime. And as you said, they're making good salaries doing that. This is not low paying work. It's a very good living. And I just think it's a great path that people truly need to consider. So, okay. So the second article is from Fast Company, and it's titled, "We spent nearly a year building a generative AI tool. These are the 5 hard lessons we learned." So this is focused on McKinsey and Company, and they fairly recently launched their own, generative AI, large language model that they developed to give access to all of their colleagues to the intellectual capital across the firm: webinars, research, white papers, case studies, a really, valuable resource. And so they had an internal effort to build this. They called it Lily, which is named after the first female hired at McKinsey several decades ago. And this article I thought was really interesting. First of all, interesting to me that they built it in 11 months. That's pretty quick. But they talk about just, how this has really been transformative within their organization, and how it's allowing their people to get access to very, very important information earlier in the sales cycle, earlier in projects than ever before. So I'm surprised, or I would think every consulting firm under the sun would be going in the same direction. But what did you think about the article? What are your observations?
So I appreciate their exposure to be able to be transparent on this, because quite honestly, a lot of companies are trying to do this. And, we've worked with McKinsey and all the major management consulting firms, and, their individual processes for helping organizations tend to be very high level and whatnot. This is nice to see that while they had a high level aspiration that they defined, and that was probably one of their biggest lessons they learned was how do you define that? They actually, put muscle behind it and actually put resources to be able to do this and build it out, rather than just creating the broader plan and then letting it slow roll forever.
Right.
So that was good. But I also like the fact that they're exposing the fact that this is still very immature. So while the technology itself is amazing and is largely untapped, in my opinion, we're still learning how best to leverage this. The fact is that there needs to be some structure, some methodology that's applied to allow organizations to adapt to and adopt this type of technology in an effective way. Because otherwise you're spending a lot of money and you may be looking good to a general market, but if you're actually not getting any return out of that investment, then you're just like greenwashing. You're painting over it, hoping that people will think that this is cool because you're at AI going in your company. But the reality is you're not getting the value that you're expecting out of it. So I appreciate the way they outlined this, and also the way that they were transparent about, hey, this is still something that we made mistakes on, and you're probably going to make mistakes on.
Yeah, they had a lot of good lessons learned that they covered in this article. One of which was that you involve a multidisciplinary team to construct something like this. So it wasn't just the various industry practice leaders getting together and putting all their favorite content together. They got HR, they got people from finance, young people they're only a year into the firm. I mean, they got a very broad section of people from the organization to muscle this thing together. And I think that was a really good point that I like. Were there any other lessons that they put in there that caught your attention?
So the one part that was interesting is, they identify, put the user first. Who's actually going to be getting the benefit from this? Is this something we're going to do as a technology exercise to help our technical folks be able to support these efforts at our clients, or are we actually going to use this like for real inside of McKinsey to get real value? And I think that acknowledgement that, hey, it may be multiple different types of users who are going to get benefit from this, and how can we make this experience for those users as best as we can? So how can we challenge those technical people who may be going to advise clients on this, but also how can we make sure that the people leveraging this technology internally are going to want to adopt it? Are they, we're spending this money, we're putting this investment, we believe it's the right way of going, but are our users really going to be able to accept this and work alongside this new digital labor concept?
Yeah. So kudos to McKinsey for playing offense with Gen AI. I hope our company does the same, by the way. I hope we have our own version of Lily. We could take advantage of that. Our last article comes from the world of entertainment. The source is CNN, and the title of the article is Hollywood Stars Estate Agree to the Use of Their Voices with AI. Yeah, this gets into the very interesting and highly provocative and sometimes controversial topic of taking a real person's voice and then using AI to create a soundtrack or a talk track to a documentary or to something else, a show on TV. Even though the person whose voice is being used is deceased. And, you have some people whose estate, their family, are saying, look, we love our family member. We are perfectly fine using his or her voice, but they're wanting to do it in a proper way, and in some cases get compensated for it. What are your thoughts on this, Michael? I know you like to lead the charge whenever we talk about IP and legal ramifications of the world of AI. But what were your thoughts on it?
So what I thought was interesting is that I know we've had a number of, non-deceased, so currently living actors and whatnot within the broader Actors Guild here in the United States, who are very concerned with the capabilities that the AI companies are developing to be able to mimic not only their voice, but their likeness, to be able to put them into a position where, maybe with a movie can be made without them, kind of thing. So building this whole concept of leveraging estates to help sort of bring back the dead, if you want to
Sure.
allow these actors who no longer have a voice for themselves, but are represented by, like you said, their estates, their trusts, their families, who are looking at this. Perhaps from a familial perspective, they're seeing this as another potential opportunity to remain relevant, because now you can have like Judy Garland's voice, singing again and doing other things.
Right.
But it also is also potentially another stream of income for the estate itself, which again benefits the heirs to that. So there is a big benefit from their perspective, and I'm sure it's all monetary for the way that they're approaching it. The ethics behind it, I don't know what kind of agreements they put in place for that. So, you have Julie Garland singing, but you also may have Julie Garland, she may be cursing or saying things that her family would never want, right? So how do you put the protections in place when you license someone's voice to be able to do that? Because quite honestly, that's the challenge we have is being able to maintain that protection for it,
The article makes the point that you really can't copyright a voice, at least right now. Legal experts debate it, but we all know about the Scarlett Johansson controversy with OpenAI, where they wanted to use her voice and she said no, and then they come forward with one called Guy that sounds a lot like her,
very much like her, suspiciously like
very
her.
much like her. The the other one I think about, this goes back a few years, but when the Anthony Bourdain documentary came out, I don't know if you recall that, but
don't.
they used an AI generated form of his voice to narrate a portion of the
Okay.
documentary. And I think that one was more controversial because I don't think, anyone had given permission for that, anyone from Anthony Bourdain's family or
Right.
estate or what have you. So the filmmaker took some liberties there. But this debate will rage for some time, no doubt. But I do think it's interesting. And as long as people are giving permission and they see it as a way to honor, a relative or a family member, or,
Right.
someone that has a very familiar voice, I'm okay with it. I think we like everything else we talk about within the world of AI, we just got to put some constraints and some guardrails around it and do it the right way. So
Agreed.
we'll keep a positive perspective on this one. Thanks for joining us. That's all the time we have today. Please be sure and listen to our other regularly scheduled podcasts that we publish each week with a great guest. And we appreciate you being here today to hear us talk about the news. Bye for now.